Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble.
Welcome to Pimpy's Investment Chat, where we keep investment talk simple. And here's your host, Pimpy.
What is going on out there, peeps? Good lordy, man. You guys got me waking up at the butt crack of dawn. I'm kicking the roosters around town to get their ass up, wake everybody else up. Oh, man, it's hard to be humble when you're proven right almost every day. In the Dinar community, that's not hard to do. It's not like you're competing with a lot of geniuses sometimes. This is what happens when you don't put your phone on mute or non-vibrate or whatever. I got people sending me currency with the twist. Carl's recent interview, I guess he did with Delta. And everybody's like, what does this mean? What does this mean? I'm like, what does what mean? Good Lord, let me wake up. So I watched the currency with the twist video with Delta. There is a couple of things I want to highlight because they are important. So let's get into this. You know, first of all, I want you to hear a couple of things between Carl and Delta because they highlight a couple of interesting topics.
I do take issue with Frank. I know that Frank has an agenda. It's obvious. I've listened to him for years. When he gets these information things, he slants them in a way that it's about to happen. I mean, we just passed the 15th. He's been harping on the 15th. You know, militia man as well.
Point is, you have to give the people the right information.
So, look, great points between Carl and Delta. One, the 15th is passed, and we know Militia Man and Frank have both been talking about the 15th. Yeah, because that's what they do. They're not the only ones. There are other ones out there. You guys know who I'm talking about. And the fact that Frank takes articles and tries to slant them and twist them in a way to mislead people. I agree 1,000%. I've been saying that now for God knows how long. I also agree with Delta. It's not about the money. It's about bringing the correct information to the people. And if you're taking articles and slanting them, then you're not bringing correct information. You're purposely misleading people. And that's the thing that even Kyle from the Fundamentals of Financing was highlighting about these other content creators, that they go out of their way to mislead you. Let's get into an article that they're going to talk about.
So speaking of information, I sent you something that was in Arabic the other day, and we talked briefly about it the other day. I still don't really know what it is about, so I'm going to learn with everybody, and I will drop the link to the article in the description at the end of the show for everybody.
Wow, that's nice of you, Carl. If you want to translate something from Arabic into English, here's the link. When you click it, see it's in Arabic, but if you right-click, it should say translate, say to English, and then you have a English version of the article, all right, my friend? So here is the entire article. So I only want to get into a few minutes of what they're talking about, and then we'll go ahead and go over the whole article.
I don't know how well they'll be able to interpret it. It's all in Arabic, but could you explain to us what that article was about?
Of course. Actually, when you send me that one, it's, I start laughing like I told you because it's basically exactly what we told the family, the Iraqi Dinar investors about it. So what they're talking about here, the liberation of the IQD, liberation from the official rates, right? Mm-hmm. Why are they trying to do that? Basically, they're trying to control, again, the parallel market, right? And this article, they're talking about the solution and what the solution is. And even Muhammad Madhar Saleh, he came out in this article, and he's basically talking about what the solution is, right? So basically, I'm going to take part by part of that article. Even though it's a good piece article there, again, this is not coming from the CBI, by the way, even though Muhammad Madhar Saleh, he's there too. But what they're talking about is, for them to control that, they're trying to, there's a suggestion basically to free flow the Iraqi dinar and make it as any other currency like the U.S. and Canada, all these international countries. But the only problem is, in this article they're talking about, Iraq, they just export oil, right? They don't have anything else like the U.S. other countries. So that's going to be very hard to do.
What did Delta say? The problem with Iraq is they rely too much on oil. Who else said that in the dinar community? Give me a minute. Oh, yeah, me.
Now, the other solution is, like they're talking there, is lifting the 3 zeros. And this is what we're talking about, lifting the 3 zeros from the Iraqi currency in order for them to withdraw the 3 zero notes. And then they're going to be able basically to come up with a new exchange rate, and they'll be able to basically control the black market rate. Like, for example, if you do that, give the 3 zero notes, you don't need a dollar anymore in Iraq at all. You're going to be able to. I do apologize. I'm going to keep coughing here, but I'm going to keep going, no problem. But what's going on is when they let's live the 3 zeros right now, you don't need dollars anymore in Iraq. Now you can have the citizen. I don't have to take like a full back with money to go purchase something because now the exchange rate is good, right? Like for the U.S., like in the U.S. right now, you don't have a black market, and you do have you have a forex. But like right now, if you go to the bank, a dollar is a dollar, right? And this is the beauty of the dollar. So the dinar is going to be the same way. So lifting the 3 zeros is the solution, and they're talking about the obstacle too. What they have in this part of the article, that there's no bank take Iraqi dinar, which is, we know that. Now, one of the requirements is to take to lift the 3 zeros and accept Article 8, and then become international.
With the return of fluctuations in the dinar exchange rate, there are renewed talks about the necessity of getting rid of the official price with the aim of reducing the difference with the price in the parallel market. The official price is the 1,320 dinars. We know that. They have an official. This is from the Central Bank of Iraq. They set that rate. It's a set rate. What they're trying to do is shrink the gap between the parallel market exchange rate and the central bank's official rate, which is 1,320 dinars. It says by subjecting the local currency to global supply and demand, similar to other countries, but many obstacles stand in the way of this step. Among them, the Iraqi unilateral economy, dependent on oil and government revenues, and the absence of correspondent banks in the dinar currency. According to the specialists, also called for taking other possible solutions, such as deleting the zeros from the currency. From the what? From the currency, not the exchange rate, from the currency, and withdrawing the cash mass from citizens and transferring it to the banks. Now, when they say withdrawing the cash mass, a lot of Iraqi citizens don't have banking accounts, and they stash the Iraqi dinar in their mattress, so to speak. And so one of the ways to get them to take that money out of their mattress and bring it into the bank is change the denominations in the currency. So instead of having a 25,000 dinar, it's going to take the 3 zeros off, and it's going to become 25 dinar. That's what they're talking about. Nowhere on here are they talking about the exchange rate. Mohammed Saleh, financial advisor to the Prime Minister, says the Iraqi dinar's exchange rate follows a system of fixed exchange rates, and the process of approving the exchange rate is one of the monetary policy tasks of the Central Bank of Iraq, as it is the independent body, especially since Iraq depends primarily on oil sources that provide. So when it says the Iraqi dinar's exchange rate follows a system of fixed exchange rates, that's what they do. They went from 1,190 dinars for every dollar. Then they devalued it. And then all of a sudden you got 1,450 dinars for every dollar. Then they increased the value of the exchange. And now we're up to 1,320 dinars per dollar. These are all fixed exchange rates that provide foreign currency. And therefore oil revenues are transferred to the Central Bank of Iraq. And reserves follow the exchange mechanisms between the dinar and the dollar, given that the central bank is the source of exchange between them. The exchange rate of the dollar in the local market witnessed great fluctuations during the past days, as it suddenly decreased from 1,480 dinars for every dollar and quickly rose again to 1,500 dinars for every dollar, and then continued to fluctuate until it reached 1,540 dinars for every dollar, and then got around 1,570 dinars for every dollar. That's going in the wrong direction. The more dinars you get for every dollar, that is bad. That's the wrong direction. Now again, that's on the black market, not the fixed exchange rate. Slay added, the balance and stability of the price in flexible exchange system requires a financial and banking market in which interest rates play a major role in the inflow and outflow of foreign currencies. And this is something that is not available in Iraq, and the mono economy is dependent on the inflow of foreign currencies, on government oil revenues, and here the forces of supply and demand are inconsistent with the unilateralism of the economy. What does that mean, Pimpy? Well, I'm glad you asked. What it's saying is the flexible exchange system requires finance and banking markets. The exchange rate, one of the ways to help control that is through the interest rate. So the central bank is going to play a key role if they decide to go down this path. And one of the things they need to do is pay attention to how the interest rate is going to affect the markets, like it does here in the United States. See, every time here in the United States they raise the interest rate, it increases the value of the dollar. And we see what it does globally. So every time we raise our interest rates here, exchanges against other currencies make the foreign currencies less valuable. We've seen Vietnam struggle with it. Every time we raise our interest rate here, it affects the exchange between the dollar and the Vietnam dong in a negative way for Vietnam. We talk about the fact that Iraq's foreign currency reserves has increased big time compared to where it used to be. As a matter of fact, they are above the recommended standard for the International Monetary Fund. So they're good, but the more they can add to the reserves, the better. But as they state in the article, mono economy is dependent on the inflows of foreign currency. And it goes on to say the government's oil revenues, talking about now, that the forces of supply and demand are inconsistent with unilateralism of the economy. The fluctuations can swing pretty big. We're not talking about small amounts of money. It can fluctuate big time. We know when Iraq set their budget, and I was complaining that they were doing it too high at around $71 per barrel. I was saying, man, that's going to affect them big time. They should set it somewhere around 55 because then they end up with a deficit and then they have to borrow money. But if they float freely and they can control the interest rates in the banks, it's going to help strengthen or devalue, depends on how good they are at money management, the Iraqi dinar. Slay continued, the economy is sometimes exposed to a large deficit in the current account and balances of payments, and the general budget is also exposed to a deficit. Here, loans are resorted to and governments are forced to reduce the national currency until foreign currencies become expensive. He's talking about now that sometimes they're exposed to large deficits. Why? Because the prices of oil go up and down with huge fluctuations. The lower the price per barrel, that really affects Iraq in a negative way and can expose them to a deficit. And then in return, the governments are forced to reduce the exchange rate like they did in 2020. This is called financing from inflation, and despite the fact that this conflicts with the policy of the central bank, but is done in consultation with monetary and physical policies, which I just brought up the other day. I just spoke about this. One of the issues that Iraq has is the inconsistency of their monetary policy when I was responding to Nader's video. He points out that the function of the central bank in general is to maintain the exchange rate and its stability for a long period. But this relates to the nature of the current account and the balance of payments, and whether there is a surplus or a long-term or stable deficit, as well as the nature of the budget. Is it expansionary or contractionary? So is it going to grow or is it going to shrink? So the issue is not easy, as all we need in the exchange rate is a circle of consultations and communications between monetary and financial policies to maintain its stability, which is another thing I brought up when I was responding to Nader's video. Iraq's ability to maintain a functionable monetary policy. I said it was unstable. It's noteworthy that since the beginning of the exchange rate crisis more than 2 years ago, many options have been put forward to control it, including printing new denominations of cash, including 100,000 dinars, or deleting 3 zeros to control the rise in the value of numbers in monetary transactions. Talk about going the wrong way. If they create a 100,000 dinar banknote, that's not what we want. We want those numbers to get lower. So they're talking about what do they need to do? Increase the dinar note or delete the zeros to control the rise in the value of numbers in monetary transactions. Now, when they say the rise in the value, they're not talking about the exchange rate, because I know there's going to be people out there misleading you with that. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about the number of banknotes necessary to do a transaction. So again, let me make this perfectly clear. The deletion of the zeros has nothing to do with the exchange rate. They're talking specifically about the banknote. Since the 1990s and during the imposition of the economic blockade on it, Iraq has suffered from significant inflation in the currency, which prompted the previous regime to go to print the currency locally. And after the year 2003, the previous currency was destroyed and new denominations. When you redenominate, that means you change the face of your banknotes. The previous currency was destroyed and new denominations were issued, and its exchange rate against the dollar was fixed. So they gave him new currencies, but the exchange rate would be fixed. Don't mix the two up. By decree from civil government of Iraq at the time, Paul Bremer, who revealed the shape of the new currency and its exchange rate against the dollar. So in this particular situation, they changed the denomination or the way the Iraqi dinar looked, but they also at the same time did something about the exchange rate. But that's not what the deleting of the zeros does. It does not focus on exchange rate. Can you change the exchange rate at the same time you redenominate? Of course you can. For his part, economic expert Nasser explains, with regards to the fluctuations of the dinar, the central bank was selling the dinar at 1,118 dinars per dollar, and then changed since the arrival of the former Prime Minister Al-Kadhimi to power and the appearance of the white papers as its price rose and became 1,450 dinars for every dollar. This caused the Iraqi dinar to rise until it has currently reached 1,530 dinars for every dollar in the black market. And despite this, solutions can be developed for this problem. He's talking about what they need to do to tackle the black market rate, the parallel market rate. So before we continue, let's hear a little bit more.
All the stuff that we're talking about. And remember, we, like I said last time, Carl, and to the family too, that increasing the rate up and down is not going to help us out as investors, right? Like 10 bips, 20 bips, they can do whatever they want, but it's not going to help us out. The only things we have to hear is lifting the 3-0. So this article is really very nice. I love this article. And the reason I loved it too, because that's confirmed what I told the family for so many years, right? Mm-hmm. And this is what basically we all know. And one of the requirements of the IMF is, in order for you to be able to be accepted in Article 8 compliance, you have to live the 3 zeros. And this article basically confirmed that. And that's really...
That's not true. It says you must have a controllable, stabilized exchange rate. It doesn't say you have to delete your zeros. Show me where in Article 8 does it say you must delete the 3 zeros. It doesn't say that. It says you must have a controllable and stable exchange rate. That's all it says.
Like I said last time, now all the priority for them is they trying to control the black market and the official rate. And they can't. Like last time I checked out, the rate I believe was today about what, like 1150 or something like that versus like 1,130 dinars, right?
It's 1,530 dinars, not 11, 1,530. Not that it's a big deal, but I just want to be specific.
And This is basically what's going on.
Wow, that's steep. All right. Well, I mean, that's a great article. So that kind of tells us until we start seeing the lifting of the 3 zeros, then it's not going to be this weekend.
It's not. No, it's not.
So when it comes to the World Bank and the IMF and the World Trade Organizations, it'd be idealistically if they would delete the zeros. But it's not mandatory. But they would like it if Iraq did, because when it comes to trade against other countries, it simplifies things when it comes to the currencies exchange. They're not having to deal with the fact that you got so many zeros. It doesn't look appealing to other governments when you have a banknote that looks so devalued. So for appearance purposes and for simplistic purposes, when it comes to bookkeeping of one currency against another, the deletion of the zeros would be nice. Nowhere, anywhere does it say it's mandatory. He explains that the solutions revolve around reprinting the currency again and zeroing it, especially if the printing process is accompanied by the process of retrieving the money stored inside homes to the banks. This is what I was talking about. If they change the denominations, they'll make the announcement and citizens have X amount of time to get to the bank to exchange the dinars that they do have for the new dinars. So a 25,000 dinar will go down to 25 dinar. Nowhere on there does it say anything about the exchange rate. They're talking about the bank notes. Hence, it is possible to stabilize the Iraqi dinar by giving banks a percentage for each citizen who owns an account and opens an account within the bank. For example, 10% as a deposit for the citizens inside the bank. As they come through the door to exchange their currency, while they're there, you can say, hey, buddy, since you're here, how about opening up an account? That's what happens. And you can capture a lot of people that way. And what I mean by capture, I don't mean like literally capture. I'm talking about getting new customers that way. He continues, the above steps will lead to solving the import issues that the government is suffering from now, and it is trying to control it to limit the smuggling process, stabilizing the currency, and revitalizing local industry and agriculture will, in general, lead to solving all economic and currency problems. So what kind of import issues is the government suffering from? The fact that their bookkeeping is so out of whack because of the amount of zeros on the currency. Not the exchange rate, the banknote. According to the Central Bank of Iraq website, Iraq includes 80 operating banks, including 62 local banks and 18 banks that are branches of foreign banks. It is noteworthy that the Iraqi bank sector is neglected by citizens who have lost confidence in it, and according to the World Bank figures issued last year, only 23% of Iraqi families have an account in the financial institutions, which is a percentage amongst the lowest in the Arab world, especially since the owners of those accounts are state employees whose salaries are distributed to public banks at the end of the month. But these salaries also do not remain in the accounts for long, as queues quickly form in front of the banks from employees who withdraw their salaries in cash and prefer to keep them at home. This is why I believe the whole entire electronic platform is not going to work in Iraq. They have reasons to not trust the bank, many reasons. For his part, financial and economic expert explains the local Iraqi currency is printed by the state and gives its value in exchange for other currencies or gold, that is, currencies of metal in the global supply and demand market. He points out the currencies that are exposed to the supply and demand market are currencies that have countries that have correspondent banks for their currencies. For example, the dollar. There are banks that correspond in dollars so that the whole world receives them and trades with them. And therefore, such a currency is considered a flexible currency with variable prices. There's reasons for deleting the zeros. The primary reason behind deleting the zeros from monetary transactions is to control the rise in the value of numbers, not the exchange rate. The number of dinar banknotes is what they're talking about, which has been attributed to inflation. Inflation is the continuous increase in the general price level of goods and services in the economy over time. This phenomenon can lead to an erosion of the purchasing power of money. That's why they call inflation the invisible tax, making it more difficult for people to afford essential goods and services. By reducing the number of zeros in the currency, the value of the money will be more manageable. Now, again, when they say the value of the money would be more manageable, they're talking about within the banking system, the transactions that they do on their computers or on their bookkeeping, okay? Not the exchange rate. And the risk of extreme inflation would be mitigated. Another reason for the proposal is to simplify financial transactions. Simplify. With fewer zeros in the currency, people would find it easier to perform calculations and compare prices, ultimately leading to more transparent and accessible financial system. It doesn't say up here anything about the exchange rates. So what are the benefits of deleting the zeros? Reducing the impact of inflation with a lower denomination of currency. The value of money would be more manageable, and the risk of extreme inflation would be mitigated. With a lower denomination of currency, they're talking about the banknotes, the value of money would be more manageable. And why is that? Because transactions that involve two foreign currencies would be easier to calculate. Simplifying financial transactions with fewer zeros in the currency, people would find it easier to perform calculations and compare prices, leading to a more transparent and accessible financial system, which we just read. encouraging economic growth by making money more manageable. The proposal could stimulate economic growth by encouraging people to spend and invest more, as they would have a better understanding of the value of the currency, enhancing financial literacy. The simplification of the currency would also help to improve financial literacy amongst the general population, as people would have an easier time understanding the value of money. So what are the challenges? Disruption to the economy. Changing the denomination of a currency can cause temporary disruption to the economy as people and businesses adjust to the new system. Logistical challenges. The process of replacing existing banknotes and coins with new ones would be a logistic challenge, and it would require the production and distribution of new currency as well as the withdrawal and destruction of old currency. Well, they did it in 2003. They gave the Iraqi citizens 90 days to take those old Swiss dinars or those old Saddam Hussein notes and exchange it for the currency we see today. Impact on contracts and agreements. Deleting the 3 zeros could have unintended consequences on existing contracts and agreements, which might need to be renegotiated or revalued to account for the new currency denominations. But a big chunk of this would just be making changes to the software that's being used for businesses. Philosophical effects. People might perceive the new currency as being more valuable, which could lead to an increased spending and borrowing, potentially contributing to inflation. Now you have the pros and cons of deleting the zeros. The Iraqi dinar had correspondence banks and a global currency that was dealt within the field of global trade. And here the demand for it will become higher and the value of the dinar will rise, supply and demand. So if they get on like the Forex and they're trading, and if they deal with just the dinar only, the need for the Iraqi dinars will increase, which will give you a higher exchange rate. Who said that in the dinar community? Oh yeah, that was me. But Iraq as a country does not currently have correspondence banks, but they are working on it. So the national currency it owns is a local currency and is not subject to supply and demand. Global, as it is a currency issued for other currencies, and the process in it is fixed and does not rise to the global process. In other words, it's not free floating on the foreign exchange rate. It is noteworthy that Washington entered into the crisis of the dollar smuggling last year. Talking about us. And Iraq was subject to the global SWIFT system, which created a gap between the parallel and official markets and increased the loss of confidence in Iraqi banks, as dozens were subject to America and Iraqi sanctions without processing depositors' funds. In addition to the involvement of, most banks are currently engaged in smuggling operations, according to what the U.S. Treasury Department confirmed. So when I keep telling you, one of the reasons why their currency is not stable, their exchange rate is not stable, and their economy is not stable, isn't just the fact that they can't control their exchange rate, but they got a corrupt government. And those banks are owned by a lot of government officials, okay? They love the corruption. They make millions off the chaos. So it's going to be very hard to get them to cooperate on these things. The other issue that I brought up on the video that I made responding to Nader was the fact that their government does not have a very high exchange in those who control the government. Maliki and his group of people, what they do is every election, all they do is switch positions within the government. They take turns. So you have the same group of people doing the same crap now for 20 years. You need to get them all out of office. Sauder tried to make that happen, and it didn't work. So Iraq needs to get rid of Maliki and his little group of hood rats, and you'll see improvement within Iraq and the value of its currency. Anyways, that's it for now. Let me know what you think. I'll catch you later. I am out.